I didn't realize this show was filmed during fucking 2020. Wow. I don't know when I thought her show had wrapped up and had, been airing because now that I've been watching it, Peter Capital's last season was like in 2018, so I should have figured this out. But apparently I didn't. So yeah, this show wrapped up like a little bit before COVID happened. Ended around March, this season did, from January to March. And then they just kind of got screwed over because of COVID, I guess. Which makes sense. I do remember during COVID, uh, they had started airing old episodes on TV and like animating them. And I had seen a few of them. There was like one with the second Doctor or something that I thought was pretty decent. I don't really remember it. So when I eventually watched the second Doctor's seasons, I guess I might catch that one. But, actually in black and white and not like an animated episode. So there was quite a few episodes I'd actually seen from this season on cable when, with her, I'd only caught a few of her episodes. That's originally what happened with Matt Smith too, was I'd only caught some of their episodes that were on cable. Meanwhile, David Tennant, I had seen all of his, and Christopher Eccleston, I had seen all of his, and Peter Capital, I had seen quite a few of his. So the show starts off with a two-parter called Spyfall that introduces us to the 13th Doctor's master. He's pretty good in this two-parter, but he doesn't do that much, because they want to do the typical reveal that that person is the master. We had seen that with Peter Capital. They had this little disguise, and the master had pretended to be Bill's friend, and it turns out that he was actually the master. They rehash a lot of the shit that Peter Capital's Doctor did, because later in the season, the master's working with the Cybermen again. It's just, it's like they don't know what to do with the Cybermen or the master anymore. The stories they tell are still entertaining, but it just doesn't make that much sense to me, at least. So there's like these creatures that the Doctor's trying to figure out what their purpose is and what this and that. Eventually, it's revealed that the Master had told them that he wanted to work with them. The Master actually fucking decides to be a Nazi. He straight up decides to be a Nazi to look for the Doctor. This Master is a person of color, though. So their real quick explanation I actually liked. For once, Doctor Who has a lot of sketchy shit with racism where they'll go back in time and then they'll just pretend racism doesn't exist during that time. I think that's most famously with Martha. But they say for him that he has like this screening thing that makes him look white. So the Nazis, they don't, hate him. But the Doctor ends up fucking like using her sonic to make it so they can tell what skin color he is, which leads to a joke of him saying, "I know how reasonable you guys are," to the Nazis, which I thought was kind of funny but kind of fucked up that she left the master to the Nazis after she disabled his screen thing, so now he's a person of color. I mean, he did it to himself, but definitely a bit cruel. Now, the next episode, the third episode of the series, is called Orphan 55. I actually quite enjoyed this episode until the end. The end was really fucking dumb. This episode ends up being an episode about how humans need to quit destroying the planet. They need to quit, fucking up the planet, no more climate change. Because climate change is a very serious issue. And global warming and all that. So that episode is about this. And it turns out like the creatures of this episode are humans that have had to adapt to how fucked up the planet's gotten, and instead of oxygen, they breathe in carbon monoxide. And then the episode ends with like this, supposed to be eerie, scary thing where the doctor goes, well, if you don't quit fucking up the planet, you're gonna end up like them. And then they show the little scary monster. And it's just fucking goofy. That is not how you do an episode about climate change. The episode itself, I did really enjoy. It's weird to make it about climate change. I have nothing against that. I am someone that believes in climate change. I mean, it's fucking hot as hell right now. And winters keep getting, not as cold. Snow doesn't happen as often. Climate change is clearly happening. And it's a real problem. And people just don't seem to care. So they could have done this way better. The episode itself is good, but it didn't need to be about climate change, and it definitely didn't need that dumb ending. The fourth episode is about Tesla, but, put down the pitchforks. They're not praising Elon Musk. Because as much as he wants to pretend that it's his company, it's just something he inherited. It's a decent episode. Honestly, there isn't that much to say about it. Thomas Edison's also in here. I actually enjoyed these episodes this season, and I finished it rather quickly. Meanwhile, it took me a few months to watch season 1 of the 13th Doctor. Now, the fifth episode is an episode I've surprisingly seen before when it was on cable, Fugitive of the Judoon, which is an episode about the Doctor trying to save this person that is a fugitive of the Judoon. And originally, you think it's this guy. Turns out it's not. It's this other girl. And it turns out that girl is the Doctor, but a different version of the Doctor. But neither of them remember each other, which doesn't make sense, because one of them has to be a past life. So obviously, if the fugitive Doctor doesn't realize that the Doctor is the Doctor, then it's a bit confusing to describe. It's easier to follow if you watch the show. But yeah, like the fugitive Doctor is like, well, I don't remember you, so obviously you're my future. But at the same time, the 13th Doctor doesn't remember her. Honestly, this storyline, I don't hate it as much as a lot of other fans do. It's clearly just an excuse to give us more of Doctor Who. It's like the Doctors, I don't remember, Time Lords are supposed to have like a certain amount of regenerations. Eventually, you can't regenerate anymore. And I believe that at this point, obviously, the 13th Doctor would have been its last regeneration. So by the time they ended the show with Jodie, they wouldn't be able to continue the show. So they decided to ruin a bit of lore and go, hey, the Doctor actually has unlimited regenerations. It's a bit more complicated than that, but I'll talk about that when I get to that episode. So yeah, it's a little setup, for a later episode in the series. And yeah, it's a fine episode. We don't get too much of the fugitive Doctor, unfortunately. But she is cool of what we do see of her. The next episode is an episode about all the Doctor and all the companions like splitting up to see all the different mysteries that are happening on Earth. Some of them are birds falling out of the sky, an astronaut missing, and so on and so on. It all leads to some people that have like an alien disease and they're trying to use Earth to fix it. It's another somewhat episode about global warming. It's not as bad though. Honestly, it's kind of forgettable. There's a husband and a husband couple in this episode that I did like, but they kind of end it in a weird way with them going on a honeymoon with this random stranger that they don't know. That was a bit weird. Because there was this girl in the episode that the Doctor helps, and she ends up just deciding to go with these two people she doesn't know. It's It's a weird thing. And the birds falling out of the sky, I believe that is something that has actually happened before in real life. Like, it happened a long time ago, where it was like this big crisis where birds were randomly falling out of the sky and people were freaking out. Like, I remember watching a documentary or something about it. I'm not usually one to watch documentaries, so I don't even know how I watched it. But I believe that is something that actually happened. I may be wrong, though. The next episode's called Can You Hear Me? And it's an episode where people are having nightmares. It's kind of confusing. It's an episode about like this gods that are trying to come back that got imprisoned. There's this one creature that the CGI doesn't look the best for, which has been something in Doctor Who, but it's been rather improved for quite a while now. So it's very surprising to see something where the CGI doesn't look as good. It doesn't look terrible, but it doesn't look as good. Especially since there's some effects in this episode where where the god guy, his fingers are coming off his body that look pretty good. Honestly, I don't have much to say about this episode. It's kind of forgettable. Now, the last 3 episodes are it's basically a 3-parter. They don't say it's a 3-parter, but it's basically a 3-parter. So the first episode, the Doctor and friends, they travel to this place, and it's the night that the book Frankenstein was written by this girl, Mary. I knew that it was a woman that wrote the book, but I didn't know her name. I know the original Frankenstein was written by a woman, and I didn't realize it was made in 1818, and like the big first appearance we got of it was in 1932, which that movie's awesome. This episode's pretty decent. This is an episode I've seen before. I had seen all 3 of the 3-parter when it was on cable. I don't know how. Maybe I watched them while they were coming out. Maybe I watched reruns of them. I don't know, but I've seen all 3 of these. It's a pretty decent episode. There isn't that much to talk about, though. There is a Cyberman that is not fully Cyberman. So it's basically a Cyberman, which is weird to say. If you don't know what the Cybermen are these robots that believe everybody needs to be like them, and emotions are weak, and they basically turn off the human brain and put it in a robot creature, and it's like human remains and shit. It's very disturbing, especially for a PG show. I'm very surprised that they're able to get away with a creature like the Cyberman. Because the more you think about it, the more disturbing it is. Well, this Cyberman is still human. Part of the robot face is missing, and you can see it's a human in there. We find out his backstory, and he had a son, and he killed his son when he joined the Resistance. And I believe he killed his parents too. Like, this dude's a dark motherfucker. He gives off a pretty good performance in this episode. And it is one of the higher rated episodes of the series with a 7.1. It's a pretty good episode. I do enjoy it. And then the next episode is called The Ascension of the Cyberman. And it's about the last of the human race. I didn't mention it, but earlier in the episode, we got the fucking loser that plays Captain Jack. I've never cared for his character, especially with the controversies behind the scenes with that douchebag. He's just always been too much of a perv for me. Like, just because he also is queer doesn't make it okay. So yeah, Captain Jack had warned in a previous episode that the lone Cyberman, it was actually in the Fugitive of Jadoon episode, where we meet the fugitive doctor. So not too long ago, he had warned the lone Cyberman, don't give him one at once. Obviously, the doctor ended up having to do that. So next episode, she goes to the future where the human race is basically extinct except for 7 people. They quickly kill 2 of them, and that only leaves 5 left. Another one ends up getting killed. The rest of them survive, though. And, they get to the Resistance. They find out that the Resistance leads to Gallifrey. Turns out that the Master's working with the Cybermen. And the episode ends. It's not too bad of an episode, but not too much happens in it. The next episode, we get some Doctor lore. It turns out that the Doctor wasn't born on Gallifrey. And it turns out she's had multiple lives before the first Doctor, even. You know, like any of the Doctors. First, second, third, fourth, so on and so on. She's had lives before them. She's been so many regenerations, but the Time Lords, it didn't fit their narrative, so they wiped it from her memory. And I guess they somehow forced her to be a child and go through school again with the Master. I don't know how they did that. The Doctor has regenerated from young to old, so I guess it somewhat makes sense. Because we went from Matt Smith, who was one of the youngest Doctors in the series, to Peter Capaldi, who was an older actor, like how the original show did. We had a lot of actors that were older, like the very first Doctor was older, the second Doctor was older. I guess it somewhat makes sense, but it's still confusing. I don't know how they were able to manage that and make her forget. Jodie has some really good acting moments in this scene where she gets pissed at the Master and demands that he show her her memories, and she pushes him to the ground. She finally has some standout performance. Like, she's always been the Doctor, and she's had her moments, but I really like that very brief interaction. Definitely shows the anger the Doctor can have. The Master is making... He easily beats the fucking Cyberman. That is something I didn't like. Because a Cyberman that has human emotions still, and is still human, is a very interesting concept. And we had already known that the Cyberium, it was something like that, along those lines. We already knew that it needed a host, and it would only let go as long as that host lives. We knew that in 2 episodes ago. But, of course, the Cyberman starts yapping to the Master, and he's like, as long as I live, the Cyberium won't leave me. It's just... Yeah, so the Master, of course, shrinks him, and I guess that release is the Cyberium. I don't know how shrinking people kills them. Like, I'm assuming he's still alive. I guess not. And that's the new thing with the Master, is that he can shrink people. It was introduced in his 2-parter in the beginning of this show. I don't know if I like it. I don't hate it, but it's weird. He can just shrink people whenever he wants. Like, that seems a bit, far out, even for something like Doctor Who. At least to me, just shrinking people and it kills them. That's the end of the Cyberman guy. When he was very interesting. I really liked him. The Master, his performance really stands out in this episode. He does really fucking good. At times, it's a little out there, a little overacting. But the Master is like that, so I can let it slide. It doesn't really bother me that much. At times, he really feels like the Master, and at times, it doesn't. He just feels a little bit too over the top. But at the same time, I feel like it works more than it doesn't. So, like I said, it didn't bother me too much. I think this guy has done a really amazing job as the Master. We get introduced to these Cybermen that are now Time Lords, and yeah, that's the Master's doing, obviously. So now the Cybermen will die, but they will regenerate, which is a really cool concept that they just kind of get rid of extremely quickly. by using a death particle that the human Cyberman had, and this random dude that was introduced in the second part, um, he's like, hey, I started the resistance, but I didn't send them far back enough in time, so it's my fault. So he's just gonna sacrifice himself now, and the doctor leaves. Like, she doesn't want to, but she does leave, and yeah, the Master and the Cybermen are supposedly killed. I won't be surprised if they come back in the next season. And I wonder how they handled the next season because of COVID. They probably had less episodes, and were definitely limited with cast members. And then finally, the Christmas special. Well, not Christmas special, New Year's special. Because the director wanted to branch out more on holidays. So he does a New Year's Eve special instead of a Christmas special, even though it basically has nothing to do with New Year's Eve at all. Like, at all. There's like an offhanded mention at the beginning of the episode where they say Happy New Year's, and she's like, when was New Year's? So it might not even be New Year's. Like, it might be a few days after or something. But this episode, I did like it. But they basically just rehash the exact same thing that we had in last year's New Year special. It's the Daleks coming back. The Daleks control this guy named Leo. In the other special, they had taken control of somebody. So they've already brought that back. And the Daleks are... The only difference is that the Daleks are impure, which was kind of the thing with the last one, where it was like a broken Dalek trying to rebuild itself. And now this one, it's a Dalek trying to build more Daleks and stuff. But they used like human DNA too, so they're impure, so the Doctor calls Daleks to kill them. And they bring back the dude that didn't like Trump. Like, that's really all I remember about him. He also killed some spiders from last season. He's still a slimy shitball. He literally tries to sell out humanity to the Daleks, and they actually listen to him. Like, he's like, yeah, I'm the leader of this planet. You can kill humanity. I don't give a fuck. And then, ironically enough, the episode ends with him being called the savior of the human race when he was trying to do the exact opposite. Captain Jack is here, unfortunately. He doesn't do too much, but I don't like him being here. So he really tried to sell out the human race to save his own ass. Like, that's just crazy. I feel like this episode's supposed to be a parallel about Trump, because they say that they're gonna make Britain secure again. Yeah, that's definitely, like, I think it's called an allegory for Trump. I think I'm using that right. Make America great again, make Britain secure again. Of course, like, the Daleks are also supposed to be used at the border. So that's like another thing. He doesn't die. The slimy shitball doesn't die. He doesn't get killed by the Daleks. In fact, they end up saving him from the Daleks after he sold them out. The Daleks kill the impure Daleks, and they try and say that we can be pure if you, like, fix the problem. Like, we were just trying to survive. But the Daleks decide to kill the last one anyway. The Doctor ends up being able to defeat them because she has another TARDIS that she had got a few episodes ago. So, it's basically just a reason to get rid of the TARDIS too, so we don't have two TARDISes. Where she tricks the Daleks into going into the TARDIS, leaves, and the TARDIS is set to go into, like, a void or something. It's it's fine. I don't know why they did the Daleks again for the New Year special. Um, so yeah, I'll finally be moving on to a different show after I watch the next season. I think I've had enough Doctor Who for quite a while now. I will eventually watch the old Doctor Who, but I definitely need to move on. I stopped for a little bit and watched other shows, but man, I think I've had enough Doctor Who, as much as I love this show.